Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing? Let's get started in 1 or 2 minutes. Feel free to start asking questions. Anyone have questions? So feel free to start asking questions in the comments, but in the meantime, I can cover some of the things that I've been seeing in the profile building space for EB-1A, EB-2NW, and O1. So one thing that continues to be important for profile building, and it's something that I tell anyone from any field who's profile building, is that you have to be doing outreach. If you are going to be trying to make as much progress as possible in your profile, like if it's something you're just doing casually, then maybe outreach isn't that important. But if you really want to, say, build up a profile in a year or 2 years, probably not 3 months, because that's like a whole separate issue. You don't want to really be doing all your profile building in 3 months because there could be questions around sustain a claim. But say you wanted to build a strong profile in 1 to 2 years, outreach is what's going to save you the most time when it comes to landing profile building opportunities. As in, you would rather spend your time, say like you have, I don't know, like 15 to 30 minutes a day, because a lot of you have full-time jobs. It's a lot to do. It's a lot to do profile building. So I understand that a lot of you may have only like 15 to 30 minutes. It's better to spend those 15 to 30 minutes reaching out to 5 to 10 top people in your field who are involved in the kinds of opportunities that you want to be getting, over, say, sending 10 applications, 8 of which might not ever even be read, because you're going after highly sought after opportunities. Would you rather be one out of 100 plus applications for an opportunity, or would you rather be that person who gets referred to the organizer of that opportunity and then as a result gets picked? And it's like a vastly different experience. Like a lot of you probably know this to some level, and it's something I've definitely seen as well. So I've been doing a lot of outreach right now to a lot of different organizations, talking to a lot of different community organizers, meetup organizers, people who are in these circles. And it just makes a big difference to have some of these people refer you to opportunities that might not even be publicly visible right now because they haven't shared them publicly. So in addition to getting noticed, you also get access to opportunities that may not have even been shared publicly. And with the case of judging, for example, it's definitely clear that some of these opportunities simply just get judges from people they know. They never put out an open call for judges because they know if they did, they would get swamped with applications. So they choose to instead go for people they know, which is why if you reach out to them and you talk to them and you show that you have the expertise to help judge, that is how you can potentially get noticed and get picked as a judge. So that's what I've seen. It's very different to get referred to opportunities versus having to stand out of like 50 to 100 applications for a particular opportunity that is publicly visible. So the point still stands that outreach is what you want to be doing for profile building, regardless of field. A lot of you who don't work in tech, who don't work in AI, reach out to me and ask, how do I get noticed? And the answer is really always the same. Just reach out to a lot of people, go on LinkedIn, search for people based on the name of the organization, and then use that as a way to get noticed by some of these people and then get referred to committee positions, to advisory board positions, to, I guess, like, for example, maybe even like white paper writing opportunities that could also come up. But there are a lot of opportunities that just don't make it to public visibility. because these people just don't have time to look through hundreds of applications. And this is something that I've heard from people who are organizing these opportunities. They don't want to be going through hundreds of applications, so they choose not to put out calls. Another thing is that you shouldn't be turning down opportunities that don't fall under the EB-1A criteria, as in explicitly. If you get invited to speak at a workshop, that might not count as judging, that might not count as authorship, that might not count as any of the criteria, but it can still be a great way to showcase your expertise, and you never know who you will meet at those events, which could lead to profile building opportunities. Go speak on a panel, and then you could get invited to judge a hackathon. You could get noticed by a bunch of people who could be great independent references. These are the kinds of opportunities that come up by you getting involved in opportunities. Just try to get involved, even as a volunteer. It's not really about getting those high quality opportunities right off the bat. Like if you're a month into profile building, don't expect to get a ton of judging, a ton of authorship opportunities just like that, because no one knows you. I mean, like there are certain people who don't fall in this category who just get opportunities right away, but most people do not. So you want to be building up your credibility by getting involved as a volunteer, by getting involved in these events simply by attending, getting to know the people who help organize these events. That is what you want to be doing in order to get noticed. That is something that is not talked about at all for some reason in the space. Maybe it is, I just haven't seen those conversations. There's this very strong focus on these are the opportunities that you have to look into if you want to build a standard tech profile. And then after that, that's when you should look at more bespoke opportunities. But that is not really, in my view at least, not the most effective approach. What you want to be doing is getting involved in all these circles, getting to know as many people as possible in your field, and then start getting invited to some of these opportunities, some of which people in your field may know about, but people who are profile building may not have ever heard of. Because I know there's this like standard equation, standard rubric that people follow where you have to, where it's like, there are these set opportunities and then you just do them and then like you check off judging or you check off authorship or you check off membership, but that's not really the case. You want to, so just going back to the point, you just want to get involved through outreach, through knowing the right people, not really about just applying for a bunch of opportunities. But yeah, feel free to start asking questions. I can also share the resources that I've put together as part of my paid newsletter for $12 per month. So as part of my newsletter, you will get access to my newsletter resources, which currently includes a profile building opportunities database for people who are working towards EB-1A, EB-2NIW, and O1. So these opportunities categorized by field, so you'll see fields down here by criteria, and so far I've listed around 400, probably more than 400 opportunities at this point within this database. Something else you will get access to are my video resources. These are just some, stop sharing for some reason. Something else you will get access to as part of my newsletter is my video resources. These are just recorded conversations with EB-1A and EB-2NIW recipients about common questions that I get all the time, such as how to claim leading a critical role, how to claim original contributions, how to put together strong reference letters. These are just some of the video resources that I currently have within my newsletter. And I recently also did an EB-1A and O1 insights session with someone in my group, private group, as part of my newsletter who got EB-1A and O1. So this recording covers specific insights that she shared in the session around profile building. And as part of my newsletter, you will also get access to my private group where members of this group have been able to get access to opportunities shared by other group members. They have also been able to find co-authors for papers and articles they are working on, and have also been able to work with people on profile building in general. And something else that I'm looking to schedule more of our workshops within the newsletter. So right now, recently I scheduled a workshop for newsletter members where an IT fellow was able to share more about the IT fellowship. The next event that's coming up is going to be a Q&A session with the chair of the IEEE Central Texas section. He's looking for volunteers and looking for more leadership. So that's another event that you will get access to as part of the newsletter for $12 per month. And that's not just tech. There are a lot of other fields represented by that section. And I will also be hosting an insight session, a Q&A session with someone who is on the executive committee of the IEEE Computer Society. So he's been an IEEE member for a while. He's on the executive committee. He's VP of membership as part of the IEEE Computer Society. So in that session, we will be covering how you can get more involved in IEEE. And I'll be hosting more of these workshops. Probably going to be hosting another workshop as well with an EB-1A recipient on how they built their profile. So just a bunch of workshops that you'll get access to for $12 per month as part of my newsletter. And you will should be able to find a link to sign up for the newsletter in the comments. But that is my newsletter, Dorcas asks, would travel grant scholarships by prestigious organizations, Alzheimer's Association, be considered awards? Depends on what the grant or scholarship is for, but it seems like USCIS leans more towards grants or scholarships given to industry professionals for industry work. Sounds like this is more for researchers. Like that could count too, but it really depends on the context of these grants and whether they are awarded to, say, some of the top researchers in your field, like a top percentage. There's a lot of context that's missing for this question. Like, are you a researcher? Are you an industry professional? But generally speaking, probably not very strong evidence for the awards criterion. But again, really depends on what the grant or scholarship is for. Anyone else have questions? Any questions? Okay, as a researcher, potentially, but you need to provide more context around that scholarship. Is it a scholarship given to everyone? Is it a scholarship given to particular researchers who are at the top of this research field and are being recognized by these prestigious organizations, but they just tend to give out travel grants or scholarships, but this still places you as one of the top researchers in your field? Because if you can show that, then that's good. Judging criteria. Can you elaborate more? For your particular profile, judging is going to be focused on mostly peer reviewing, so reviewing papers for conferences, reviewing articles for technical publications within your field. You want to be showing that you're judging the work of others in your field, particularly professionals in your field, not so much students. But there could be an element of judging PhD students if you are a researcher, which is something that seems to be accepted. If you look at the policy manual, it states that judging dissertations can count as a strong form of judging. So I would imagine you are judging the work of PhD students if you're on some sort of dissertation committee. So that is something that could also count. Mohan asks, I have a total of 14 years of experience in data analytics field. I'm a data architect now. How do I put my case strongly under original contribution and critical role? So 14 years of experience, depending on the significant outcomes you have created through your work, critical role could be something you could claim, especially if you can show that the work that you have done has been instrumental in creating significant outcomes for your field. For original contributions, you have to show that your work, as in your original contributions to your field outside of your company, have been used by other companies in your field. There has been commercial usage, evidence of commercial usage, or evidence of significant attention. Original contributions is much harder to show for industry professionals, but it can be something you can show. You just need to show that your original contributions are being used by other companies outside of your own company. But critical role is just, that tends to be the foundation of strong industry profiles in general. Anyone else have questions? Any other questions? Feel free to put them in the chat and comments. All of my research papers have been published in conferences, including 9 IEEE conferences, 2 Springer conferences, and 2 AIP conferences. I feel that these are relatively low tier. Why are they low tier? Also, think you're an industry professional? So if that is the case, this is quite decent for authorship. You don't have to present papers to a standard of like a researcher because you're not a full-time researcher. There's no general threshold, but you have quite a bit for authorship. Nana asks, what if you have thousands of users using your product? Would that count as original contributions? Depends on what you mean by thousands of users. Are you working on a startup? Are you running your own company? It's not really about the number of users of a product you have developed. It is more about the significance of what you have contributed to your field and whether it's actually in use. And it could be thousands of users. That could be, say you have thousands of CEOs using your technology because they found out about it through the work of your company and realized that you had open sourced the contribution and now it's being used by thousands of CEOs. That's great evidence. So it really depends on what you mean by thousands of users, because users could be thousands of CEOs. Users could be, yeah, there's not enough context there. What memberships are considered to be satisfactory by USCIS? I can only comment on general types of memberships, but could be committee positions, could be committee conference chair positions, could be board memberships, advisory board memberships. Any memberships where you can show that a requirement, a hard requirement, not an optional requirement, a hard requirement of membership is outstanding achievements in your field, and that is something you're going to have to define on your own. And then from that, present a compelling argument. Anyone else have questions? And how do I know the ballpark figure that would be considered as high salary by USCIS? quite a few ways to make this argument. One way to make the argument is that your base salary is in the 90th percentile based on numbers shared by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So that is something you're going to want to look up. 90th percentile for base salary. Anyone else have questions? Anyone have questions? Just something to keep in mind when you're asking if an activity helps with EB-1A. What you really have to ask is whether an activity shows that you have risen to the top of your field. The ideal kind of activity is probably going to show that you have risen to the top of your field in some way. If it doesn't, it's just going to check off the criterion or criteria on a plain language level, which can still help with profile building. It's just not something that is going to help with final merits. A lot of people seem to just not meet final merits instead of not meeting the criteria. That's something that I've seen. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. Can you actually claim authorship without any citations for EB-1A? Yes, you can, especially if you are a junior. I mean, not junior. If you're an industry professional, you're not really expected to have citations. Anyone else have questions? Is IEEE membership considered by USCIS as under membership's criteria? No, because it's too accessible. IEEE fellow, very strong evidence. Senior member, not very strong evidence. IEEE society committee chair, depending on the kind of work you do as a committee member, potentially. IEEE conference chair is good sometimes, but it's all about, again, the context for your profile. How has this committee position shown that you have risen to the top of your field? Like if it's a membership position that has nothing to do with your field, it's like purely administrative or something like that, and that would be a much harder argument to make than showing that you are some sort of journal editor or some sort of organizing committee member and you are in charge of reviewing highly technical submissions shared by the top researchers in your field or top industry researchers in your field. That's much stronger evidence. That's how you need to be thinking about EB-1A. Sort of applies to NIW and O1 as well, but NIW is more propose and error focused. If I start building my profile on this membership's criteria, will I be able to satisfy this criteria in 1 year? Depends on who you are and how quickly you can land the right memberships. Even then, membership is difficult to claim. You can land all the typical memberships that have counted in the past, but still not be able to claim the membership criterion. A couple that people really love to talk about all the time are BCS fellowship, IET fellowship, I think IEEE fellowship, but that's usually unattainable by most who are not in research. The other ones are generally not as prestigious and not as difficult as BCS and IET. You can also go for committee positions within IEEE, within IEEE societies specifically. So there are quite a few things you can do for memberships. Can we be members of multiple IEEE sections and contribute to them? My understanding is yes, but you might want to ask the IEEE chair that I will be talking to, and you'll be available for a Q&A session next week. You can get access through my newsletter, but you should ask him. But I think generally yes. Anyone else have questions? Any other questions? Anyone else have questions? Feel free to ask more questions. Can take a couple more questions. I have 10 published papers and around 488 citations. The conferences are mid to semi-top tier. I currently work as an industry researcher. Do you think this is okay for EB-1A? Hard to say without knowing what these papers are, but if you are claiming that they have been published in mid to semi-top tier conferences, this is pretty decent for authorship. It is probably not going to be what moves the needle for you unless you can show that your research is highly significant, even in industry. Satish asks, just IEEE membership is enough, or it should be senior IEEE membership? Neither of them are enough for the membership criterion. People only go for senior membership because it allows them to start taking on leadership positions within IEEE. That is what I hear. I'm hearing BCS is not being accepted these days. How true is this? It's not really about whether you have BCS or not. It's not really about whether you have, this is for most activities, not all. Like if you are the board member of the top company in your field, then that will probably help move the needle quite a bit. But for something like BCS and any of these high quality, but not like needle moving sort of activities, they can be accepted and they can be not accepted. You shouldn't be relying on one single activity to make your entire case. That is not how EB-1A works. EB-1A is about showing that you've risen to the top of your field by presenting a compelling argument for how you've risen to the top of your field. BCS could be a piece of that evidence. It could just be completely irrelevant as well, because if you don't put any of this into context, then BCS could work or BCS could not. There's no like guaranteed activity short of what I just mentioned, like being one of, and that, even that might not even be a guarantee, but say you're like an IEEE fellow, you're the board member, you're a board member of the top company in your field. That's extremely strong evidence that you've risen to the top of your field. And even then, it's not really a guarantee, but it is a very strong argument. You need to be thinking about what could strengthen your argument. If BCS strengthens your argument, go for it. Doesn't matter if it's going to be accepted or not, because you don't know. You can't control that. But if it was, say, BCS, like spend like a year just on your BCS application and do nothing else, or get involved in your field and try to get a couple of committee positions, a couple of judging opportunities, that sort of thing, then yeah, that could be great. Like then yeah, go do those activities. Don't spend like a year just on one single opportunity, especially since you could get declined for the fellowship. So I asked, having to strengthen a design patent to highlight original contributions. Would citing it in research papers and obtaining expert letters help? And are there other effective methods? Yes. Getting citations from research papers and getting expert letters could definitely help in explaining the significance of your original contributions, especially also in highlighting the fact that they are being commercially used. That also helps as well. Showing the commercial impact of the use of your original contributions can also help with the original contributions criterion. I think I answered this question already, Satvik. This helps with authorship, but whether it makes your case or not is hard to say. All right, a couple more questions. Dorcas asks, I am a researcher who was recently selected as American Journal of Public Health think tank fellow. I am one of 6 out of 300 applicants in the country. Does it count for award? It could potentially count towards award, but it sounds more like membership. This is quite strong as well if you can explain that the 300 people who applied were all really top people as well. This sounds like something that's really high quality. So if you can show that you were 1 out of 6 out of 300 people, all 300 were really top, and you were selected as the top of the very top people in your field, yeah, that's great. It's great evidence for membership. Not sure about, could be an award as well, but most likely membership. All right, I will take a couple more questions. Anyone else have questions? Anyone else have questions? All right, if there are no other questions, thanks everyone for joining today's live.